Welcome to Woven, Soft Edges, Deep Roots, a space where bodies, culture, and transformation meet. I'm Sarah, a body worker, a tender of community care, and inviting you into conversations that nourish and ground. If you love exploring the intersections of healing, creativity, and belonging, consider supporting this work on Patreon. Your generosity helps sustain the quiet labor of community care and keeps these conversations flowing. You can also connect with me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are available in the show notes. Now, let's dive in. Hello and welcome. I am Sarah Newberry with the Woven podcast, and I'm here with my friend Savannah. And Savannah, I'd love for you to tell me and whoever's listening a little bit about you.
My name is Savannah McDonald. I am the executive director for the Belleville Area Humane Society. I've been in nonprofit fundraising for like 10-ish years, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yay, I love that we get to have these kind of conversations. You're one of my most favorite people to talk to, just because our conversation ends up all over the place and yet
Yeah,
all at the same time together. Yeah.
definitely.
And it definitely fits in with a lot of the main core themes that I love, which is like grief and life and relationships and connection and systems, whether they are serving or not serving. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see where we end up today.
Could be anywhere,
It could
truly.
be. Yeah. Yeah. So before we hopped on the call, you were kind of talking about like some things that are going on in your industry in fundraising, and it's an interesting time in the world to be in anything that takes money, because I think whether we realize it or not, there are conversations about money happening like in every inch of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm admittedly not an expert in these two schools of thought because something that's kind of sort of funny about nonprofit is that if you are excited about helping people and you have a heart for service, you can kind of accidentally fall into nonprofit. And then if you fall in nonprofit and you have like certain skills, like I am a decent writer, speaker, you realize pretty quickly that you can't do anything without money. So, in my experience, most people who are fundraising are pretty self-taught. There is this entire industry of people who are working to professionalize fundraising as a field, but I think it's a really like young profession, like young field. Philanthropy itself, of course, goes back like forever if you define it as like people helping other people. But like the American version of philanthropy, what we're living in now in our nonprofit world, is so much more complicated than what I wish it was because it's driven by tax incentives and by all these like modern structures placed over the fundamental truth of we want to help each other and we believe, I think, writ large as a society that people deserve certain basic amenities. Um, we just can't seem to figure out how to make sure everybody gets it.
Yeah. Yeah, if that's so true. I know this is a conversation we've had a lot, but I've been really clued into community and how we build that and how we live with that or not. Um, there has been a lot more people going, what is happening in the world? Everything's changing so quickly. We need community. And I think that that's a big piece of what you're speaking about too, is like you said, we've kind of always wanted to help each other, but as time has gone on and modernity and like
Mm.
systems at play and stuff like that, here we have the system that like the question I want to ask is like, you know, how do you help a person while also helping yourself? Because that's intrinsic, right? Excuse me, that it's like when you help someone, you are receiving something in that yourself, but that's not usually the reason we help someone, and yet it's kind of like a secondary thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you frame it in that way because I've been thinking a lot about these two schools of thought within fundraising right now. And the first is kind of your like classic donor-centric fundraising. And that seems to really be a focus on like meeting with your donors, meeting them one-on-one, talking about what gets them excited about the mission. How in what ways they want to help people, in what ways does this like we say fill their cup, fill your cup a lot versus community-centric fundraising, which is a more focus on what the clients or the community actually needs to be like a better, more ethical, more peaceful, happier place. And what strikes me about that dichotomy is like it's really unfortunate that that is a dichotomy. Like, shouldn't that first, shouldn't the donors want shouldn't the donors be asking for community-centric fundraising? And I I think that this is a sticky question because I think if you like really just fundamentally, I do think that people are good and that people do want to help each other. But we get tied up in all of this like interpersonal ego stuff. Like every board I've ever like worked with or been slightly involved with is made up of people, and people have bad days and good days, and they have emotional reactions to things. And I have certainly had not productive emotional reactions in professional settings or in nonprofit settings that have not furthered the mission because we're human and we're human talking about really human issues. So the thing that I find interesting about this like donor-centric versus community-centric model is that it seems to me that it's evolving into this like us versus them, that there's like it's echoes of the rich are over here with the donor centric and the communities over here, the community centric fundraising, the 1%. And it just doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I definitely see this is just another avenue where there's like division and separation, right? Where it's just like, do we have to be on two sides of the aisle? Like, or can there be this like flow where the community centered approach also informs the donor center approach, and vice versa, where the donor center approach also informs the community centered approach?
Yeah, exactly. And the this makes me start to think about things like Patreon, which is I know we've talked about is something where okay, let me back up. If you really look at like who's giving like large amounts of money, of course it is the rich, and of course it's like tax backed things and financial whatever. But if you look at who's giving like a percentage of their income, like a larger percentage, it's people in like mid incomes. It's people with low incomes are still very philanthropic. Where St. Louis is not one of the richer cities in the United States, but we are one of the more philanthropic cities in the United States. And the people who are giving to a cause, who are giving $10 and then from there, still on their taxes, taking the standard deduction, are giving to a cause because they believe in it, because they want to give to the cause, which I also think parallels even people who are taking a tax deduction. They could give, I don't know how many charities there are in the United States, but it's so many, hundreds of thousands probably. So the fact that you have chosen this cause to give to, I think still speaks to this like deep connection to it, even if you are getting something in return, like even if it is a little bit more transactional. And so Patreon is interesting to me because theoretically Patreon is so transactional. Like you're literally paying for like a benefit, extra videos or a button or whatever monthly. But I think in reality, most people don't stay subscribed because they want that thing from that creator. Most people subscribe to Patreon because they like believe in that creator and what that person is like adding to the world.
Hello, friend. If today's conversation is resonating with you, I'd love to invite you deeper into the woven community. When you join Patreon, you're helping sustain the quiet labor of community care, supporting the life and work of a body worker and tender of soft spaces. Even small contributions ripple outward and make this work possible. You can also follow along on Instagram and TikTok for somatic practices, reflections, and ways to stay rooted in your own soft edges. All the links are in the show notes. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, I definitely have been around Patreon for a little while. And I also feel like this is the appropriate time to bring up like shaming messaging, right? Because like I loved what you were saying about how maybe lower income people are still providing support. They still want to help. Whenever I listen to NPR during their like pledge drives, there is so much like shaming that happens with that makes me wonder. Like, there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to contribute now because I feel icky. I feel like there's the messaging is like, well, if you listen to this and you really like it, you should be contributing. And while what the message is true, right? Like the message, I get the message, but there's a moment of like, ooh, I don't love that, you know? Then I think about all the other marketing in the world, and as a small business owner myself, I'm always thinking about this, like, how am I messaging myself? And then as like a person who's in the healing world, um, there's also this notion, and I mean, I've been doing my work for a long time, so I've definitely done a lot of this icky stuff, and then afterwards been like, ugh, yuck, why did I say that? Or like whatever, you know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and like there's kind of a thing where, and then there's also like all the marketing gurus that are like, come buy my product and I will get all of the followers for you and all this stuff. And I think about like the work that I do is helpful to people, but as soon as I say something like, you have to have this service from me and only me, and your life will be less than if you don't, it gets really icky, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about you as being a provider in the space of like your like fundamentally so much advertising is centered around like fear, right? Like you need this or else.
Hmm.
And I what you said about like having done icky things, like that definitely resonates. The classic example, I think, is of course, I'm in fundraising for animals. That Sarah McLachlan commercial. Yeah, right. But and I think that that's like such an interesting example because right, it's these animals in these like tiny cramped cages, in the arms of the angels is playing. She's holding like like a scruffy little dog. It's this like very visceral image of suffering. And then it's put on you. And I feel like it's almost always at like 2 in the morning that I've encountered it. And
Yep.
and it says if you like don't believe in this suffering, if you want there to be less of this suffering, give us money. And I really struggle with that because on one hand, a lot of the professional fundraising advice is that you should move away from that, that it should be more about celebrating your wins, that you say like hey, this is the transformation that you can be a part of. Like this is the problem that we're solving. Like things are better thanks to you and thanks to you being part of this donor community. That I think makes so much sense and probably is like a healthier way of thinking about the world. But when you're like in it and you're just like seeing the just graphic suffering day to day, I totally understand the impulse and have certainly had the impulse to be like, help, this is truly gnarly out here.
Yeah, and I think that you're touching on something that is super interesting to me too about like truth telling. And I'm always watching social media and marketing from that lens of like what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And I have a good friend Jessie who we talk about this. She's a, depth psychologist, like Jungian analyst, and we will toss different Instagram things back and forth. And it's like, ooh, look at this one. It feels so good. Like this is good marketing. And a lot of times it is truth, but we have also lived in this culture for so long that truth feels very ambiguous and difficult to like touch, you know? Um, and I think if that like what would it be like if we told the truth? You know, and like the marketing that you're talking about, like it's really gnarly out here and there is a lot of suffering and here's how you can help with that if you want to. You know, if it feels right for you, here's how it could help to lessen the suffering of another being or something like that, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But that's not hot, that's not sexy, that's not algorithm, you know.
Right? I mean, that's it, the algorithm.
Yeah, you know, I posted something on TikTok the other day. I was like commenting on a video, and it was kind of about recent events that happened, and it was like we're all blindsided by this event that happened, and yet are we? Because we're
Right.
all living in this algorithmic reality from Google to social media to TikTok or whatever. It's like we're kind of in this like bubble, you know? Um, and so it's like we're working against like what our bodies want to i- consume, you know? I want to consume the
Yeah.
truth. I want to consume your truth. And then whenever everything is like polished or like feeding the algorithm, then when we're in real life, there's still this like, do I believe you? You know?
Yeah.
And I think I have a friend who talks about this all the time, but when we bring social media and other forms, like even your television or something, it's like you bring that into your home that is your sanctuary, your safe space. How many people are like scrolling from their bed at night or whatever, or first thing in the morning? And it's like, from a body perspective, like we can't distinguish between those things. And I know that sounds insane because, like, of course, one's on my phone and one is like in real life. But the more we do this, the more murky it becomes. And I want to believe that when you tell me something is suffering and this is how I can help, I want to feel that being truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I've just done in the work that I've done with you through the book clubs and just kind of how you approach life, have been focusing a lot more on like literal feelings in my body. Like so much of American culture is about ignoring your body. Like that's ultimately the goal is to just be a floating like head, perfectly contoured head that has like no corporeal being because that's the skinniest you could possibly be. And you take up no space, especially if you're a woman. And ideally you wouldn't have a body at all, right? I think. And I
Well,
have
as
found,
long as you can produce something with or
yeah,
without a body, you may need a body if you're producing something with said body.
true. That's true. If you can feed the machine in some way with your body, then we will allow you to have a female body. Um, and I have been struck these last couple years, especially after reading the Kimberly book, Call of the Wild, right?
Yeah.
That I feel like my email literally puts me into fight or flight. And I think I was craving that. I finally turned my email widget at 7 p.m. It goes into focus mode, which I think what you're supposed to do is turn off like Facebook and other distracting apps during your workday, but I use it swapped. I turn off like work stuff from 7 to midnight, and if you click on the click on the app, it'll give you a pop-up and say like, do you want to bypass? Like you can totally bypass this. I will let you read your email. Like you're the adult here. But just giving me that like extra split second of having to think about it, I have now caught myself. I've caught my nervous system being like, I I need a threat. I need something I can solve or change or help, or I need to demonstrate like some sort of value. I'm feeling insecure. Help, help, help. Let's click on my email. And just adding that little extra bit has allowed me to realize like how much of this phone that I carry everywhere with me like is affecting my literal like body and mind, and like genuinely creating these like strong emotions.
Yeah, and the awareness to even feel the shift in your body is, I mean, that's huge. Just being able to slow down enough for that split second to be like, wait, am I choosing the email? And if so, like, why am I choosing that email today? And I love that because you're like, oh, I am feeling the urge to fix something.
Mhm.
Maybe I have like a broken doorknob around somewhere that I can celebrate that win of fixing the broken doorknob over an email, that
Yeah, or
that
just
does
demonstrate
cause,
value.
yeah, that does cause the fight or flight potentially. I mean, gosh, fight or flight, we could talk about that
Mhm.
forever, but I have been really searching out when I can feel the opposite of that because so much of our life, like even we're talking about marketing or like asking for donations or anything can feel like an easy fight or flight moment. And so and gosh, with like, I mean, I just saw a vision in my head of what I witnessed a couple weeks ago of like I just opened my phone and saw like someone being murdered on social media.
Right?
It's
Right.
like this is not okay. Like this isn't meant, our bodies are not meant to handle things like that. And
Yeah.
um I don't know. I think we have to remember that our bodies are slow. They like slow and they like slow integration. And for us to have moved so quickly, it's really hard for our bodies to like accept all of this input all the time. And as someone who is like ADHD and really appreciates novel stimulation,
Hmm.
um, that has been something to really navigate because there it is. It's right there, like boom, 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 doom scroll, like all the novel stimulation you possibly can get. But like, at what point do you like exercise all of the dopamine or whatever that is, and you crash out or you like just don't have any more to give, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I really feel like being intentional is key. Now I'm going to swing it back around here to Patreon because the reason why I'm so intrigued by Patreon is because like you were saying, some people really um like move towards Patreon because they believe in the creator and the creator of the content, creator of the art. And I love that, right? Like just that fact alone should be worthy of a platform like that. I was first introduced to Patreon by Amanda Palmer, which I know people have conflicted feelings about her these days, but when she wrote her one book, The Art of Asking, it was really like eye-opening to me. It was mind-blowing to me that somebody could lean so heavily on their community for their support when we live in this like hyper individualist Like I'm going to go all on my own, very almost anti-community living that we have. And I feel like that's been ramped up over the last 10, 15 years or whatever. For someone to lean so heavily on trusting the community to like lift them up, I really started to look for like places where that has happened in the past. And it was so shocking and surprising to me, but like in my world, in my work of midwifery, of healing work, like that's how that used to be. It was like healers, shamans, people, they never had to worry about where their next meal was going to come because the people in the community knew that that person needed to be well fed, needed to be well taken care of. And that was like the basis of why I created my own Patreon, which I haven't released yet, which maybe by the time this podcast goes out, it will be released. But um in there it talks about like why you would want to support someone like myself in this crowdfunding way. I mean, I'll be really honest. I would love to get to the place where I had so many people paying $5, $10 a month that I wouldn't have to charge anybody for a massage or for a healing session or whatever ever again. Like that would be like such a cool goal for me. Um, but I also realize like that's an uphill battle because people are not super used to this. Like
Yeah, but that I think that's why it's so interesting to think about like philanthropy and that yes, for sure, I think there are people who are motivated by like tax benefits. I think that's not that many people though. And I think even those people who are motivated by tax benefits are just doing it because they don't want to leave money on the table. Because there are plenty of other things you could be doing. There are plenty of other causes you could be giving to that aren't messy and don't require like I think mostly people give because they want to build a better world. And going back to the Sarah McLachlan commercial, I think that's like a perfect example of what you were talking about with this like fast hit of dopamine, this like very obvious, emotionally charged, like just fast food for your nervous system kind of thing. And I think that we are culturally getting A, desensitized to it, but B, tired of it. Like not just that it doesn't work, but I consciously don't want it to work on me.
right. I agree
And
with that too.
I had a really, I think, interesting, I've had this like ongoing argument. Walk with me. I think these things are related. I'm going to try to connect them to one of the things that my shelter really practices is low barrier adoptions, non-judgment, like almost always, when we interact with an animal in distress, it is a failure of the system. Some process somewhere has broken down. Like when people are going hungry, it's not because people are actively wanting to starve others. Now, there are certainly some evil people in the world, for sure. By and large, people are good, and people on a micro scale are good. People are good in communities, people are good face to face. So we just had a transport of these like really beautiful, highly adoptable, but under socialized dogs that came to us from like commercial breeding facilities. So like stuff that you don't normally see in shelters, Boston Terriers, Cocker Spaniels, things like that. And there's been this debate about like how careful should we be in placing these dogs? And that question really comes back to like how many barriers should we put up between us and strangers who want to help these animals? How how special do the people have to be able to be part of our cause? And I would posit that they don't have to be special at all. That whoever is first at the gate and meets these dogs and has a connection to these dogs, I trust them as a human to now be in my community, to now have this animal. Like yesterday, we had two labs that were like very shut down, and there was a big debate among staff and among other volunteers about like should these animals like stay with us and should we like socialize them and hold them back from like the real world and from a stranger coming and adopting them? Would that be better for them to like be protected from the community? And what ended up happening is a woman, I don't even know her name. The adopter knows her name. The adoption counselor, like they had an hour-long conversation. Her name is on the microchip. I just don't happen to because that's not my literal job. Came in and saw both of these labs and was like, "Hey, this actually really resonates with me. I want to adopt both of these two, and I understand what it's going to take to bring them, to create a home for them, and I feel I'm up to the task." And there's a big leap of faith for some folks in believing this stranger, this like random person, quote unquote, off the street, that she's going to do right by these dogs. But the crazy thing is, like, every one of us is just a stranger off the street. Like, she is no more special or better than like somebody already in my community. Like, we can't all do it. We can't all make changes unless we trust each other.
Yeah, that's a really, really beautiful way of putting that. And I also, what I heard in there was like this ideal for perfection a bit. Like, should the dog be perfect enough, or like should the person adopting the dog be
Good point.
perfect enough? And as I'm navigating some of these, like I'm changing a bunch of things in my company right now, and I was writing up some of this stuff earlier today, which is why it's on my mind. But there is a sense of like, even down to this podcast, it's like I have done every piece of this podcast on my own. I've not really even asked anyone. I mean, I have asked some people who also podcast that I know, but most of it has been me sitting on my computer, like tick, 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 tick. And I know that it's not perfect. I know that like there's background noise, and I know that the editing, it's raw, and there's a part of me that's like, I still just want to get it out. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll figure that out as I go along. And I think about that as someone who would be possibly adopting an unknown dog. It's like, I love how, if those were her words, like, I'm up for the task of figuring this out. And it's like, yeah, can we trust someone to be up to the task to figuring it out? One of my best friends got a dog recently, and she didn't sleep for like a month because it was a puppy. And she was like, "What did I do?" But now it's like a month later and she's sleeping again. And
Yeah.
now it's like this great little family dog. Actually, it's a
Yeah.
huge family dog. But but like the point is like she was up for the task, and it was really, really stressful for a little while, but she figured it out. And I think
Yeah.
we've forgotten that path of like, we have to just figure some things out sometimes. And sometimes I
Yes.
don't get to figure something out until I already release it into the world.
Yeah. That's hard because that's
It's
vulnerability.
it's so hard. And it's like progress over perfection, or like
Hmm.
done is better than perfect, or whatever. And I used to believe that I wasn't that much of a perfectionist, and then I started studying oh, I'm gonna forget her name, but she was a Jungian um she was a young person too, like a Carl Jung follower.
Yeah.
She wrote The Pregnant Virgin, and I cannot think of her name right now. Woodman, Marion Woodman, that's who I'm talking
Hmm.
about. She wrote a bunch of books about perfection, especially in women. And I just think like there's something for all of us to explore in that. Not just women, like everybody is like, what is our obsession with being perfect at adopting a dog, releasing something on the internet? Like, opening
I
a
love
company,
that.
whatever. It's like there's something for everyone to explore on why do we feel like it needs to be perfect.
Yeah. You're totally right. Like I'm thinking through all the times that I've started having kind of a visceral reaction to when people who aren't in the trenches with us, generally like well-meaning donors, are like, I hope you find the perfect home for this animal. And that's for sure like a phrase. And I will have this reaction that like whatever they're what they're really saying is I hope that this animal will be happy and safe and cared for. And none of those things require perfection.
Right.
And in fact, like you're totally right that holding back and building up these walls keeps us further from happy and protected and safe and fed and loved. like perfection keeps us back from love for sure. And it keeps back animal welfare. Definitely. We have a pretty novel approach to things like returns. Like if you adopted a dog from us or a cat from us and it didn't work out, um, that's fine. It's like dating. If I don't want the animal to like live in a home that isn't right for them, and they can just come back and be with us, and then the next person might be a better fit. Like my beloved dog, she passed last year, but I had her for I think 8 years. She was a foster, and then I adopted her out to these people who were super nice. She lived with them for 2 weeks. She was an absolute terror to them, a nightmare dog, like pooping and peeing in the house, horrible. And they returned her back to us. And I kept her for 8 years, and she was like my soul dog. And I just think, like, what if I hadn't been the type of person, like, if we shame people about being vulnerable and saying, like, this isn't working, this isn't right for me, I need to bring this dog back to you. If we shame these people, then they just like live in this state of like hidden suffering when we could just be honest with each other and say, you know, this cat wasn't right for me, but I bet this cat will be right for somebody else.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that I think really speaks to the like shame and the judgment that you've been talking about.
Yeah, when you were talking, that's all I was thinking about is like there's so much shame in the return, and
Yeah,
it's like you should have worked harder, you should have
right,
like given up more or something when really, I mean, and that is also probably what prevents a lot of people from adopting too, because
right,
I mean, I have 4 kids at
exactly.
home. Like it would be scary for me to risk like adopting an animal, cat or dog, and not knowing how that animal would actually do in my home.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's like, and if I could be like, oh, you know what, 2 weeks and it didn't work or whatever, like that seems reasonable.
yes, it is reasonable, but that is not how animal
No.
welfare treats it. And I think you're right that it's this desire for perfection that you should adopt this animal and things are immediately perfect or
Right. And
you're bad.
that's another thing too, is like the immediacy of perfection. Like
Yeah.
it could be perfect like in a year, or it could be perfect in like 5 weeks or something like that. But
Yeah.
we do expect this like things clicked into place or something.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
fairy tale, you know what I mean? Like that's like some kind of fairy tale um thing that isn't real, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's very American too. Like this,
Yeah.
like the individualism, the immediacy, and I going back to this idea of like donor centric versus community centric. I think that what you were saying about how we need to slow down really resonated because in my experience, when you one, it takes a long time, even as like a professional person. Like I am like in the rapidly shrinking middle class, really like middle working class. So oftentimes I'm working with a population who are, have even less resources than me. It takes me time to understand what that community even needs or wants. So it takes me X amount of time to understand that. And then turning around and trying to bring that to donors and explain to them, and not even just explain, but to bring them with us. Because I fundamentally, I really truly believe that if we gave it enough time, that donor-centric fundraising and community-centric fundraising don't have to be diametrically opposed. Like they really can be hand in hand if we if there was a certain amount of trust expressed on the donor side. I mean, I really think that the donors kind of have to slow down. And so much of this goes back to like transactional philanthropy, expecting something in return for your money and not just investing in a future. Like we have to really think about philanthropy and think about Patreon and giving as investing in hope and investing in this like theoretical feeling that could take some time to pan out.
Well, and I think that you're touching on something so profound where it's like, yeah, we have to, like, the divide isn't working in any of those realms of the divide, right? Like
Right.
we have to like come together and like mesh and meet, and work together, compromise on like what we're going to do going forward based on the two different viewpoints.
Right.
Um,
And so something that has been interesting for me is like is allowing myself and part of this is like you have to have the space in your own nervous system and I have to have the resources to be able to even try this exercise. Giving myself permission to just kind of like forgive people who have done something that like maybe baffles me or that I find like bad or cruel. And putting yourself in the shoes of those other people and this empathy piece, this like the amount of resources that is required to in this day and age experience true empathy is like it's making empathy kind of a luxury, and that is making philanthropy even harder because it really requires you to think outside of your own individual experience if we're actually going to make like functional change for people and for pets, just because we believe fundamentally people and pets deserve a certain level of dignity, no matter how like rude you are. I believe you should have food to eat, you know?
right. Well, and that's also like back to the algorithmic reality where it's like, how do we have empathy when we're only being fed visions of the same thing that we are used to?
Yeah.
There's like a lot of trends in the somatic and healing world that I'm tracking, and I have to catch myself and be like, "Oh yeah, like I bet your feed has a bunch of pet stuff or like animal-based stuff." I don't ever see animal-based stuff on my feed. Mine's
That's so
all
interesting.
like
Yeah.
mine is all like love and light and da da da,
Yeah.
and in business stuff and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, how can we expect to have empathy when we're being like synthetically fed? And I'm not saying we all have to like, divorce the matrix and like never go into that realm because that wouldn't work, right? Like we live in this world.
Right.
So like, but we do need to have some mindfulness and consciousness around how it's being utilized, both with our consent and not, because let's just be real here, there's a lot of not consenting going on.
Right.
And we have to have capacity in our nervous system to deal with that, right? To deal with, I didn't consent to AI being here or whatever, or I did,
Yeah.
or
Right.
I didn't consent to my entire life being algorithmic. Like I want to see all of my people on my feed, not just the people who are interested in the same things as me.
Yeah.
Um, and I know there's people who are curating that for themselves, and that's good. Like we need more of that, but we also need more of real life body to body, nervous system to nervous system interaction to continue practicing those skills too. I talk about that a lot with my kids, but we still have to be in the room with each other.
Yeah, and that is something that I think that we have learned as fundraisers. I mean, I think that's probably what every human being has learned post COVID is that like it's one thing for me to like tell you a story over Zoom, and it's another thing for us to be in a ballroom and for me to like hold the animal and be like, there's some phrase that I've been using a lot, so you would think I would remember it in this moment, but I don't really. Like collective effervescence, I think is the phrase.
Ooh.
Yeah, where you're like in a group and you're experiencing like it's like when you're all singing something together or when you're clapping about something together. And that's like the best part about philanthropy is when you get to this moment of like, and that's why I think people are right when they say Sarah McLachlan commercial. That's not. the way to go. That showing people hope is the way to go. Saying, I do have a solution and you can be part of this solution. And like, yes, the suffering is real, but um, there's something that not only can be done, we're doing it. And if you want to do it too, join me. And
Hmm.
I think that I think a person who's doing a really like beautiful example of this is Miss Rachel on,
Yes.
yes. Because like she's talking about some really heavy stuff and she's doing it in a way that is like really joyful. And that is, I think, an important reminder for people like me who can like be experiencing and you too. I mean, I think you probably also have a lot of secondary trauma because people come to you and they tell you stuff and they get like
Hmm.
really personal and in the weeds about trauma they've experienced. And I really think that secondary trauma piece like is real and it is taking up so much more bandwidth than we even realize.
Oh, yeah.
And finding the joy, still being able to find the joy amidst the secondary trauma so that you can then be like a more productive fundraiser like is kind of grim but is true. Like that's the test.
Yeah, or we could say like a more whole human,
Yeah.
you know.
Sure, sure.
Ah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of grown out of the Miss Rachel stage. I'm like trying to think of these big things that you're talking about. Like we definitely have other things like K-pop Demon Hunters right now is really trending. Have you watched
Yeah.
that?
Oh, absolutely.
I think
Multiple
I've been
times.
telling like every client of mine about it because it's just like there's so many layers in that movie to like unravel and be with. And that's just, like that's what's so beautiful about like pop culture too, right? Is like you have
Yeah.
like that's art right there. Like that's art is the ability for us to like see ourselves within something completely different than ourselves. And I think that that's worth saving and that's worth investing in and that's worth to bring it back to Patreon. Like that's worth
Yeah.
the $9 I spend on the Emerald podcast and like some of the I follow a couple podcasts on Patreon and I'm a subscriber because one I if I want someone to do that for me, I want to be able I want to do that too, right? And I also want to see how it works and I also want to see if it's worth my investment. And I have found that like it is, and it's like it's not even what I receive, but it's that I know someone else is feeding their children based off of my contribution. It's that someone else is being able to like do their art and their craft and their healing work by the little slice of pie that I like add to it. And
Yeah.
I just wonder if NPR took that stance versus like you're listening and so you should be paying.
Yeah.
What kind of different, like, maybe not even like the amount of money, but like what kind of donors would show up to that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that they're probably not doing that in the face-to-face meetings. You
Right.
know, they're not building real relationships with
Yeah.
that model.
Yeah. Well, and that is an interesting thing too. I mean, which is a whole tangent, but um post-COVID world, people have forgot about building relationships and that it's not a like fast and easy thing to do, right? You do have
Right.
to cultivate them. I put out a request in my local natural birth group, and I was like, "Hey, I want to connect with some more birth workers. I'm doing some stuff, and I want to hear about you, but I also want to be able to refer to you and." I got all these people that were like, "Oh, great idea." And I was like, "Cool, like let's set up some coffee dates or something." And then like crickets.
Right.
I'm like, "I'll even set up a Zoom call with you or whatever." And it's like we have to remember that we are humans. We're animals and we require the community, the tribe. Like I'm not going to refer a pregnant person to a doula that I don't know intimately.
Sure.
And I'm not
Sure.
talking like one coffee date. I'm talking like three or four. And I show up at your events and you show up at mine, because like I've had too many referrals go south and I'm very particular about who I refer people to these days because of it.
That's interesting. Because I'm also thinking about that, like in terms of like connection needing to scale. Like, because when I think about like whether or not I would adopt a cat to someone, like the standard is really low. Most people, and I think that this probably speaks to how people have like lost connection with other people. Most people are really good to animals. The vast majority of people love dogs and cats, or at least are like neutral and appreciate them. Like, hey, dog's not for me. But you talk to people and they talk all the time about how they don't like other people. I hate people. That's why I love dogs. No, no. You actually need to feel, it's not that you need to, I guess. It's that I want you to
Hmm.
feel connected to all other beings. And I was thinking about when you were talking about like this nervous system to nervous system connection, that I wonder if there's something to that, like with us and with companion animals, like co-regulating with my cat.
Oh yeah, there's definitely co-regulation that happens with animals. When my son was really going through the height of his anxiety, some of the things that his therapist and stuff were like, "Can you get him an animal? Because they can help co-regulate." I definitely think that animals are part of that, but you do need human connection. I read that book, The Anxious Generation, and they talk a lot about like incels and like people who are
Sure,
stuck in their houses and and like they're peeing in a litter box because they don't even want to like leave their room to go to the bathroom, and maybe they
sure.
come out like once a week or something, and it's like I just can't see how the longevity of that human body will thrive,
No.
maybe survive, but like then I think about if that person ever, had their own children and like how that line of I mean, I've spoke about this before, but like I'm very clear on what part of my maternal line has contributed to my current every day, every moment, breathing moments sometimes.
Yeah,
And I think that makes me very careful about what I choose to do and surround myself with, right? But also like that one generation of someone not leaving a room to be in connection with other human beings is very detrimental.
yeah.
Um, and the same thing goes the other way. Like if we had one generation of people like reparenting themselves from a gentle perspective, like
Hmm.
how much the world would be a very different place in one generation, right? Like that's very hopeful, positive thinking on my part. But um, I think that animals definitely can co-regulate, but we do need humans. We do. And I would say something radical by saying like, no, I actually need you to go figure out why you don't like people.
Yeah,
Like
good
I
point.
I need you to. I it's actually not even about you. It's about the rest of us and how you
Yeah.
need to figure that out for us.
A lot of times I find too that it's based on like fear and assumptions and an other that like doesn't even really exist.
And I would say like you haven't figured out how to communicate with people.
True.
Like boundaries and communication and all of those very rudimentary things. Like whenever I think about people who say I hate people, I'm like, what? Like, how
Yeah.
can you? Like, I get the sentiment, especially like the average, like you go to the grocery store and people are just rude because they feel like they don't matter. Oh my gosh, this is totally reminding me of something else that I want to tell you about
Yeah.
at a different time.
Okay.
But essentially it's like about how we just are so ready to die. Like we're just so ready to die in this culture. It's like,
Yeah.
and
That's
instead
interesting.
instead it's like, what if we actually did the work to stop hating people? Or that means also like when you go to the grocery store, you're not the belligerent asshole that's like rude for fun because you
Right.
may not ever see that person again. I mean, I grew up in a small
Right.
town where like that wasn't possible because I was rude to that person who knew my mom or something.
Right. Gonna call your mama.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I feel that way very much in St. Louis and in specifically my neighborhood. My kid comes home and says something, oh yeah, I already knew about that. And
Love that. That's
it's
community.
it's community, right? And yeah, it's so takeaway here, right? Is like if you don't like people, go figure out why.
Yeah.
We actually need you. Okay,
We need you. We need you.
we do need you, and you're
Yes.
very important and you're valuable, and
Yes.
we need you to figure this out so that life isn't so hard for you, but also life isn't so hard for the rest of us,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure that's hard for some people to hear. And like I do understand the sentiment of that overarching, like the general swaths of humans together, they aren't great. It's not great, but also like you got to go figure that out.
And I think too, like almost always the response to stuff like this in animal welfare is like, well, there was one guy in Colorado who did something horrible to an animal. And it's like, you're right, and I completely believe you. And you are absolutely right to be upset by that. That is upsetting.
Yeah.
But the fact that you had to go all the way to Colorado, or the fact that you had to go all the way to 6 months back to find somebody out of the thousands and thousands of people who aren't doing that, and that you're focusing on that one thing and allowing it to create your whole worldview, I would wonder, is it serving your happiness?
I can only imagine someone listening to this and being like, but what about and yeah. But I also think that like to your point, there's something to be discovered and figured out and like there's like an anxiety there, right? There's like a feeling
Yes.
and it's like, okay, let's unravel that a little bit. And
Yes.
yes, people abuse animals from time to time, but what's happening by us not adopting this animal to this person?
Exactly. And what kind of like world are we investing in where we
Yeah,
expect everybody, we expect the worst out of every stranger? Like, I
yeah.
just can't live like that.
Yeah, me
Won't.
either.
And I
Me
don't
either.
want other people to. Like, I love what you
Right.
said about how, like, we need you.
Yeah.
I
Right.
want you over here on this other side.
Yeah.
Join
Yeah.
us.
Right. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much,
Yeah, thanks
Savannah.
for having me.
And, when I do get the Patreon released, hopefully you'll be able to read it and tell me what you think about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully everyone else will join me on Patreon. And not just join me, but there's so many creators on Patreon that are worth putting a little bit of effort toward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And it feels good. It feels good to put that effort towards it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Until next time, Savannah.
Yes.
Bye. If you liked what you heard today, consider supporting Woven on Patreon. Your support helps sustain the quiet labor of community care, lifting up the life and work of a body worker and tender of soft spaces. Even small acts of generosity make a big impact, nurturing the kind of care and connections that our community needs. Thank you for listening, for sharing, and for being part of this web of support. Until next time, stay soft, stay rooted.